Chapter 1. When Erick came back. I was lying on the bed with a face mask on, one mask for myself, and another placed on my belly for the baby. His face was dark as he tore the mask off my face and demanded, "Haven't you caused enough drama in the live stream? Now you're going to make a scene at home too? You're the one who wanted a child. I agreed to give you one, and yet you're still not satisfied?" I sat up quickly, pulling down my shirt to cover my belly, nervously meeting Erick's gaze, wondering if I had been found out. But to Erick, my reaction only seemed like a guilty admission. He sneered in disdain. "What happened to those promises you made just to become Mrs. Erick? You swore you'd accept everything about me, that you wouldn't care if Lisa was in my heart. After just a few years of living in luxury, you've already forgotten how you begged me like a dog back then? Olivia, don't push your luck. I'm taking care of Lisa and the baby, no matter what." His words were like a sharp knife, cutting away all my flesh until only a bare skeleton remained. Back then, I had thrown myself into this with courage, believing that if I gave enough, Erick would fall in love with me. I quit my job, devoting myself to being his live-in maid, cooking, cleaning, enduring his mother's constant, baseless criticisms. But the truth is, those who come to you willingly are always taken for granted. It's the ones you can't have that are cherished the most. The shame, the humiliation, the pain, it was unbearable. My eyes reddened as I shouted, "Erick, you can't use my love for you as an excuse to humiliate me like this." Erick froze, his eyes showing a flicker of regret. After a long moment, he hesitated, then reached out to wipe away my tears. But before his hand could reach my cheek, a phone rang. It was Lisa, her special ringtone, the one I had heard countless times over these past 7 years. Erick looked at me uneasily before turning away to hurriedly answer the call. A sweet, delicate voice came from the other end of the line. "Erick, can you come over? The baby is restless and won't calm down until it hears your voice." I couldn't help but roll my eyes, a 2-month-old embryo already having demands? "Please." But Erick didn't think twice. He turned and left, so anxious that he didn't even bother grabbing his coat. Of course, no matter how childish the lie, if it came from Lisa, Erick would always believe it. I remember my first birthday after moving in with Erick. I begged him for a long time before he finally agreed to celebrate with me. Halfway through cutting the cake, Lisa called, sobbing about someone throwing rocks at her window. "Erick, I'm so scared. Come save me." Erick's face changed instantly. He dropped the cake and ran out the door. But she lived on the 18th floor. What kind of hero could throw a stone that high? Later, when I had my appendicitis surgery, Erick convinced my mom to leave, assuring her repeatedly that he'd stay and take good care of me. Under the dim hospital lights, he just sat there quietly by my bedside, playing on his phone. I was in pain, terrible pain, but my heart was filled with sweetness. I thought, if he could just stay by my side all night like this, I would be willing to die. But a few minutes later, Lisa's call came through again. Her kitten seemed to be dying. "Erick, please, can you take it to the hospital?" Back then, I still tried to hold on to him. I reminded him, almost pleading, "Erick, you attended her cat's funeral just yesterday. Could you choose me this time?" But no matter how much I begged, he left without looking back. Now, I dismissively waved my hand at him. "Bye-bye. And don't forget to close the door." Chapter 2. Erick left with a dark expression on his face. The room instantly fell silent, and I carefully picked up the pregnancy confirmation and looked at it. That tiny dot. Yet it filled my heart with such overwhelming sweetness, as if I had eaten pure honey. After 7 years of marriage, Erick had never wanted to have children with me. My mother-in-law blamed me for being a hen that can't lay eggs, forcing me to drink a huge bowl of dark, bitter pregnancy remedies every day. That medicine was truly bitter, unbearably so. Every time I drank it, I would rush to the bathroom, retching nonstop. Erick had witnessed this a few times, and each time he would cross his arms and smirk at me from above. "Olivia, you really go all out just to keep the title of Mrs. Erick. He doesn't love me." He married me back then only to spite Lisa. The day after we registered our marriage, he already regretted it. He instinctively rejected all my care, telling people I was merely the live-in housekeeper he had hired. Then he would openly date Lisa, holding hands, hugging, breaking up and getting back together, endlessly entangled. At first, it hurt. I felt sad, but as it happened over and over again, I got used to it. However, a few days ago, he suddenly asked if I was ready to be a mother, if I could patiently raise a child with him. He even secretly searched for information about pregnancy care, tips for mothers, and how to support a child's growth healthily. I thought he had finally realized he wanted to have a child with me, that he wanted to live a good life with me. But no, he wanted me to help raise someone else's wife and child with him. Luckily, I was smart and used some tricks, and finally got pregnant. Early the next morning, I made breakfast as usual. Before I could sit down, my mother-in-law couldn't help but scold me. All you know is how to eat, and you can't even get pregnant. My son must be really unlucky to have married a jinx like you. Saying that, she pointed disdainfully at a bowl on the table filled with the dark, foul-smelling medicine and said, "Drink it now." Resigned, I picked up the bowl, the bitter smell hitting my nose, and my stomach immediately started churning. My mother-in-law didn't understand that no matter how fertile the soil is, if no one tills it, no amount of medicine will make any difference. Amidst the dizziness, I heard the mocking voice of my sister-in-law. "Mom, why are you still counting on her? Lisa is already pregnant. You should just wait to hold your grandchild." Saying that, she opened her WeChat feed and shoved it in my face. 3 hours ago, Lisa had posted a photo. In the photo, Erick was standing awkwardly in the kitchen, carefully adding formula to a baby bottle. On his handsome face was a serious expression, as if adding even a bit too much would bring about catastrophe. The caption read, "Rookie dad reporting for duty. He practiced more than 20 times with the bottle all night. He truly loves the baby." Below, all of Erick's friends were congratulating him, asking when they could attend the wedding. Erick replied, "Soon," just waiting for her to agree. Even though I had repeatedly told myself not to care, my heart still ached as if pierced by needles. My sister-in-law smugly took her phone back. Then, in front of me, gave it a like and said with schadenfreude, "When my brother marries Lisa, it will be a grand wedding, not like some people, who moved in with nothing but their luggage without even a dinner." How despicable! For all these years, I worked tirelessly to care for Erick's mother and sister. But just because I had thrown myself at Erick to marry him, they found every opportunity to humiliate me. Before, I loved Erick and was willing to endure everything for him. But now, I took the bowl of medicine and poured it over my sister-in-law's head without leaving a drop. A filthy mouth like that deserves a good rinse. Chapter 3. That day, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and I were having an intense argument, forcing Erick to come back home. I thought he would lose his temper and yell at me, but to my surprise, he simply stared at me with an amused expression. Impressive. "Olivia, if you didn't want to drink the medicine, you could have just said so. Why make such a big scene?" He raised his hand, gently moving the hair away from my face, intending to apply ointment on my bruises. After all these years of marriage, this was the first time he showed concern for me. If this had happened before, I would have been overjoyed. But now, without hesitation, I turned my head to avoid his touch. Feeling an instinctive revulsion, Erick's face immediately darkened, and he grabbed my chin, his expression furious. "Olivia, you're pushing it too far." Tears welling in my eyes, I met his gaze and asked, "Why can't I push it? Your mom and sister can throw tantrums. Lisa can throw tantrums. Your best friends can throw tantrums. Everyone in this world can throw tantrums. But why? Why can't I? Just because I love you? Is it just because I love you?" Well, Erick, listen carefully. From now on, I, Olivia, don't love you anymore. As if my words had provoked him, Erick suddenly pinned me down, his expression full of mocking anger as he tore at my clothes. "Saying you don't love me anymore now? Isn't it a bit late for that? Olivia, you were the one who came to me first. You will forever only love me." His eyes were red, filled with a raw possessiveness. Panic-stricken, I thought of the child growing inside me and grabbed something at random, smashing it against the back of Erick's head. With a loud thud, he passed out, breathing heavily with fear. I looked at the lamp in my hand, determined not to let anyone realize I had knocked him out. I also fed him some sleeping pills. And so, that night we shared a bed for the first time in 7 years. His phone rang over and over. It was Lisa. This must have been the first night in his life that he hadn't answered Lisa's calls. It was a serious move, one that led to Lisa showing up at our door the very next day, crying and demanding compensation from Erick. Her so-called compensation was to have a party for the baby inside her, right here in our home. The baby felt wronged, so it has to be a grand party to show how much you, as his father, care. Sister Olivia is the best at this. So let Sister Olivia serve the baby. Sister Olivia, what do you think? Her words were framed like a request, but her gaze toward me was filled with provocation. All these years, whenever Erick treated her even a little coldly, she would torment me to prove Erick's love for her. Back then, I was trapped in this twisted love triangle and couldn't see what was right or wrong. Thinking back now, it was damn disgusting. I didn't respond to her. Instead, I looked at Erick. Yesterday, before Erick came back, I had already consulted a lawyer online. As long as a child is born during the marriage, regardless of biological parentage, both spouses have a legal duty to raise the child. With Erick's family's abundant resources, I need to secure them for my own child. So, I couldn't divorce him. In a week, he would go with Lisa to participate in a reality dating show. They would be gone for 6 months, maybe even a year. By the time he came back, everything would be set in stone, and it would be too late for regrets. So what I needed to do now was endure patiently for this long week. On the sofa, Erick held Lisa in his arms, his cold eyes glancing back at me, who stood to the side. With a sneer, he said, "She's just a housekeeper. Why ask her? Just tell her what to do." Saying this, he rested his head on Lisa's lap, not sparing me another look. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, shrugged, and replied, "Well then, that's overtime work. I'll need extra pay for that." Chapter 4. On the 5th evening, a luxurious banquet took place as scheduled. I barely had time to catch my breath before putting on my white uniform, holding a tray of drinks, and weaving between the various guests, serving them. After all, if Erick got dissatisfied and took away my black card, it would all be for nothing. Thinking about this, I glanced in Erick's direction. He was standing next to Lisa, who was basking in attention, talking to people. Occasionally their eyes met, and it was impossible to miss the sweetness they shared. Suddenly, without warning, a glass of wine splashed across my chest. I couldn't help but cry out, and instantly, everyone turned their attention towards me. A mocking voice spoke up. "Whoa, did you wet yourself on purpose to seduce me?" I couldn't help but look down. My white shirt was soaked, and my bra was now faintly visible. I felt extremely embarrassed. The man who spoke was staring directly at my chest, his face full of lewd intent. It was Joel, Erick's cousin and Lisa's second biggest fan. I didn't want to engage with him, so I turned and tried to leave, but he blocked my way. Quicker than me. "Why the pretense? Didn't you just get yourself wet for our entertainment? With breasts as big as yours. You must be a real flirt. Come on, let's go to the lounge. I'll let you have your fun tonight." The group of rowdy friends behind him started to cheer, each crude comment worse than the last. I felt humiliated and furious. In a voice low enough that only he could hear, I warned, "Joel, are you insane? I'm your sister-in-law. If you do this to me, your cousin won't let you off easily." He scoffed. "With Lisa around, even if I did you right here, my cousin wouldn't care at all." As if to prove his point, he started groping me. I was terrified, struggling desperately, looking for Erick to save me. He noticed me, his face darkening as he started to approach. Suddenly, my heart filled with hope. Like seeing the first rays of dawn, I thought, maybe this time, he was finally willing to care about me. But then Lisa fainted, calling out softly for help, and Erick stopped in his tracks. He stared at me with a conflicted expression for a few seconds, and then turned to lift Lisa up and rushed away. Tears began to flow down my face uncontrollably. "This is what you deserve, Olivia. This is the price of loving the wrong person." But I had only loved the wrong person. It wasn't some unforgivable crime. They shouldn't have humiliated me like this. In my grief and anger, I raised the bottle in my hand and smashed it into Joel. Afterwards, to prevent me from suing Joel, Erick testified that I had seduced his cousin, which resulted in me being detained for 24 hours. When I was released, Erick was cuddled up with Lisa in the back of a Rolls-Royce, ready to leave for their reality dating show. He looked at me for a long while before sighing and saying, "Olivia, don't make trouble. My family's reputation and Lisa's image are more important than you. When I come back, I'll give you an explanation." Really? The last bit of hope in my heart was extinguished completely. Half a year later, the dating reality show became a hit. The trending topics were all about Erick getting into a brawl with Lisa's rumored boyfriend on the show. Hashtag Erick Lisa overnight stay hashtag. Hashtag Erick fights for love hashtag. Hashtag actor sweetheart true love hashtag. The entire internet was going crazy, collectively demanding that the show host a grand wedding for them right away. Whether it was on the large screens of the commercial plaza downtown or some obscure small website, clips of their romantic interactions were playing non-stop. On the bus, in the subway station, whether people were going to work or coming back, all they could see on their phones was the sweet romance broadcast between Erick and Lisa. Everyone was immersed in this epic love story. But suddenly, an unexpected photo and caption burst onto the scene. One was a picture of my marriage certificate with Erick. The other was an ultrasound of a baby. Caption, "Husband, the baby and I are waiting for you to come home." The whole internet was instantly in an uproar. Everyone realized that Erick was already married, and that Lisa had knowingly become the other woman. Seeing the videos of people flocking to the dating show venue, demanding answers, I couldn't help but click my tongue twice, remarking that this was truly losing face. Then, I casually hung up Erick's 48th call, looked up, and caught the gaze of the man next to me, feeling uneasy. "Why are you on the same flight as me again?" I asked. Chapter 5. The man laughed softly at my words, his deep eyes filled with mockery. "What? Are you discarding me after using me once? Olivia, you really are quite fickle." I choked, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, feeling incredibly flustered. Luis, Erick's arch-nemesis. Back in college, the two were actually very good friends. But, as fate would have it, these two like-minded people had very similar tastes and both fell for Lisa. To fight for her love, they ended up becoming enemies. All these years, Luis chased after Lisa, always ending up in the same awkward position as me. Almost every time Erick took me to provoke Lisa, Luis would be there, and then, the male and female leads would reconcile, while the two villains, Luis and I, would walk away quietly nursing our wounds. Fellow sufferers, Luis and I became familiar with each other that way. So after being left behind by the protagonists once again, I ended up sharing a few extra drinks with him. By that time, I was already emotionally and physically exhausted by all the fertility medications, and after he jokingly offered to donate his genes, I actually decided to go ahead with it. But even though he said that night that he was totally willing, why did he have to chase after me every day afterward, demanding that I take responsibility? To shake him off, I deliberately pretended to sleep and waited until I was the last one to get off the plane. Only after I made sure he had really left, did I finally feel safe enough to board the car heading to my house in France. My best friend Eva was there to greet me. I had asked her to buy the house for me. She had moved to France permanently during her final year of college as an exchange student. Over the years, she had started her own studio, held exhibitions, and led a thriving life. After we caught up a bit, she mentioned that she wanted to introduce me to a distant relative of hers. "He lives next door, so you can look out for each other," she said. In a few months, I'd be having my baby, and having a familiar face nearby certainly sounded reassuring. But when I extended the invitation with full expectations, I never imagined that the person who would show up in front of me would be Luis. He greeted me cordially and brought a series of baby items, a stroller, a crib, and more. Without waiting for my reaction, he started unboxing and assembling everything. I nervously placed my hand over my belly, suddenly sure that he had come to take the baby away from me. I turned to confront Eva, but she had already slipped away unnoticed. "Traitor!" I sat there fuming, Not knowing what to do, Luis took the opportunity to cook up a bunch of delicious dishes, placing them in front of me and trying to appease me. Don't be mad, Olivia. I'm not here to take the baby. It's just that, seeing you like this, I don't feel comfortable leaving you alone. Let me stay with you, okay? When the baby is born, you can decide what happens next. It's up to you. His voice was soft and gentle, as if he was afraid that speaking too loudly might scare me off. He wore a confident smile on his face, but his hands fidgeted nervously. He was scared that I would reject him, just like I had been scared that Erick would abandon me all those years. Suddenly, I felt my heart soften. I grabbed the chopsticks from his hand, speaking stubbornly. What do you mean? Take or not take? The baby is mine. It has nothing to do with you. I want spicy chicken. Can you make it? If not, just leave. He nodded immediately. Yes, I can make it, but there aren't any chilies at home. I'll go buy some right now. He said this and ran out the door, not even taking off his apron. Watching his hurried figure, my heart suddenly felt warm. Well, all right then. I'll let him stay, at least until the baby is born. Chapter 6. And so, the proud heir of a prominent family really became a babysitter in my home. From a glass of water when I woke up to adjusting the heater before bedtime, Luis took care of everything. If I scrolled through my phone and liked a particular dish, it would appear on the dining table the next day. When we went for checkups, Luis carried all the bags, running back and forth, while all I had to do was sit there and cooperate with the doctor. Since leaving my grandmother's house, it was the first time I'd received such meticulous care. The blue-eyed, blonde doctor envied me for this and said, "Your husband seems to love you very much." Luis had just come back from paying the fees when he heard her words, and he replied naturally, "Yes, I love her very, very much." Immediately, my heart started pounding uncontrollably. They were speaking in French. He thought I didn't understand, but what he didn't know was that just yesterday, I had learned that very phrase. He said he loves me very, very much. But wasn't he in love with Lisa? How could he love me? I couldn't figure it out. Even after we reached home, it was snowing outside, and the road was slippery. I was about to get out of the car when Luis opened the door and picked me up in a bridal carry. Because of the pregnancy, I'd gained a lot of weight. I was embarrassed and terrified, yelling for him to put me down. He just smiled calmly, saying, "Don't move. I'm carrying the baby." There was something so intimate about the way he said it, and my face flushed. He didn't even look down at me, but it was as if he could see my blush. He spoke with a smirk. "Have I not seen you at your worst? Every time you clung to me, tears and all. How could being pregnant make you suddenly so distant?" Indeed, whenever we saw each other, it was always after heartbreak, with me crying, and Luis was the one who would repeatedly hand me tissues without getting annoyed. He never seemed to chase after Lisa. He had always been there for me. So when he said he loved me, maybe there were signs all along. I got lost in my thoughts, mentally building myself up, and was about to ask him clearly, but then he suddenly stopped. A voice came out of nowhere. "Olivia, get the hell down here." Erick was here. The house was bought with his black card, so it wasn't surprising he found me. I knew he'd be mad. Who wouldn't be if they were cheated on? But I didn't think he'd come so soon. Just days ago, I checked up on news from back home. It was filled with insults towards Lisa and him. I'd heard many production teams and partners were terminating their contracts with them. The former golden couple had suddenly become despised, like rats in the gutter. Erick came from a wealthy background, so I thought even if he didn't care about his career, he'd stay back home to be with Lisa. By the time he'd return, I would have already had the baby, and everything would be settled. But now, this was really making me uneasy. Seeing that I wasn't coming forward, Erick lost his patience, storming up to pull me away. Luis was quicker, stepping between us, his voice firm. "She's pregnant. Don't touch her." No sooner had the words left his mouth than Erick threw a punch at him. I screamed, but Erick said coldly, "She's my wife. Who are you to tell me what to do?" With that, he grabbed me and used face recognition to unlock the door, dragging me inside. With a loud bang, the door shut, and the room fell deathly silent. Erick sank onto the couch, glaring at my 7-month pregnant belly as he rubbed his temples in frustration. I don't care if that bastard out there is the father. Get rid of it. As long as you get rid of that baby now, you can still be Mrs. Erick. I'll give you whatever you want. Chapter 7. Erick must have lost his mind, thinking I would get rid of the baby that I worked so hard to conceive just because he told me to. I ignored him and asked instead, "Why did you come here?" Lisa must be panicking. "Should I book you a flight back home?" I picked up my phone and skillfully opened a booking website, just like when I had arranged a return flight for Erick during my grandmother's funeral. I grew up without parents, and it was my grandmother who raised me. I married Erick and moved far away to Yun City, so far that I couldn't even say goodbye to her before she passed. Neighbors told me that, in her final days, my grandmother kept asking to see Erick and me one last time to fulfill her dying wish. I begged Erick to accompany me to her funeral. He reluctantly agreed, but as soon as we arrived, Lisa called in a panic, demanding Erick's attention. Erick, agitated, ordered me to book his flight home immediately. In our tradition, we're supposed to keep vigil for the deceased overnight, guiding them peacefully to the afterlife. I pleaded with Erick to stay, but all I got in return was his back as he walked away. Once, I longed for him to stay. Now, I just wanted him gone. But some people can be truly shameless. When I tried to send Erick away, he kicked over the table in anger. "Dream on. I'm not leaving," he sneered. "You're upset because I didn't want to have a baby with you? Well, abort this one, and I'll give you a child. Lisa's about to give birth, too. It'd be nice if our kids could grow up together." My child, just a companion for Lisa's? I laughed so hard that tears started falling. "Erick, you are such a bastard," I shouted. "They are both children. Why is it that you're willing to care for Lisa's but not mine?" Erick gritted his teeth and snapped. "Are you serious? It's different because you're my wife, and you went and cheated on me. Now you expect me to raise someone else's child? Olivia, do you think I'm some kind of fool?" "Oh, and what about you stepping up to raise Lisa's kid?" I retorted. "Doesn't that make you the same kind of fool?" Fuming, Erick stormed out. Before he left, he called and canceled all my credit cards. I had no job and had been relying on his money for years. But what he didn't know was that, from the moment I received his cards, I'd started making plans of my own. I was confident in my preparations, but I underestimated just how shameless Erick could be to force me to come back. He sold this house, my home, under his name as my husband. What choice did I have? I stayed at the neighbors for a while. Then, frustrated, Erick bought the house back, dragged me home, and moved me back in. This whole push and pull brought Lisa right to my doorstep. She arrived to find Erick cooking shrimp for me. The past few days, Erick had sulked while I enjoyed meals Luis made, his face as dark as storm clouds. He insisted on cooking for me, despite my protests, determined to prove his worth. The four of us sat at the same table, the atmosphere awkward and heavy. Erick took the initiative, placing a shrimp in my bowl, trying to please me. "Go ahead. Try it. Isn't my cooking better than certain people's?" Before I could respond, Luis reached over, taking the shrimp from my bowl. "She's allergic to shrimp. She can't eat it." The one who loved shrimp was Lisa. Even though Erick hadn't brought up aborting the baby again lately and was genuinely trying to be good to me, love has its habits, ones he could not change, and ones I no longer cared for. With a clatter, Lisa threw down her chopsticks, her eyes brimming with tears. "What is wrong with you all? I'm the one who's hurt here, yet all you care about is her." Chapter 8. I noticed Lisa as soon as she appeared. She looked terrible, even though she still had her curled hair, red lips, and perfect makeup. The fatigue in her eyes and the pallor of her face couldn't be hidden, not even by layers of foundation. And her child was gone. It seemed that the past month and a half had been very rough for her. She had already been unmarried and pregnant, wrapped in scandals. Fortunately for her, at that time, Erick, the famous actor, had helped her create the image of a childhood sweetheart romance. But once it was exposed that Erick was married, she immediately went from being a devoted love interest to becoming a despised mistress in everyone's eyes. Her career took a nosedive, and she faced bankruptcy due to breach of contract penalties. She was even attacked by her own fans. And it was during one of those attacks that she lost her baby. It was said that even her uterus couldn't be saved. This had happened just a few days ago. I remember hearing Erick's phone ringing over and over again that day, and he didn't pick it up even once. Lisa must have truly panicked, disregarding her health and coming here in a rush. But the man in front of her wasn't moved, watching Lisa's same old, poor acting. For the first time, I saw disgust in Erick's eyes. He frowned and snapped. Enough. Olivia is my wife. And you are only my sister. If I don't care about her, should I care about you? Ha. Now I'm his wife. And she's his sister? He never admitted it like this before. He turned his gaze toward Luis, who was silently eating, and mocked. Aren't you the one pursuing Lisa? She's crying like that. And you're not comforting her? Luis stayed silent for a while before finally raising his head to look at me, his eyes showing an uncommon seriousness. I never said I liked Lisa. I approached her because I didn't want anyone to be alone when they're feeling down. Hearing these words, my heart couldn't help but start pounding uncontrollably again. All those nights of drinking together, crying and laughing, came flooding back to my mind. So, his act of liking Lisa had all been for me? With a loud bang, the table was flipped over. Erick grabbed Luis by the collar and threatened him fiercely. Olivia is my wife. Keep your thoughts to yourself. The two men were on the verge of fighting, while next to them, Lisa suddenly collapsed to the ground. She had pretended to faint many times in front of Erick before, and every time, he would mercilessly blame and punish me for it. But this time, she really fainted. Yet Erick seemed oblivious, too busy confronting Luis. In the end, I couldn't just sit by and watch, so I called an ambulance for her. But the woman pampered by Erick still needed to be taken care of by him. After she woke up, Lisa repeatedly threatened suicide, leaving Erick with no choice but to stay by her side day and night in the hospital. I finally had a brief moment to catch my breath. It just so happened that during those days, my best friend Eva was preparing to open her long-awaited art exhibition. Back in the day, Eva and I were considered the most promising art students by our teachers. In fact, there were 2 spots available for studying abroad in France, one for Eva and one for me. But at that time, Erick and I had just started our relationship. He had once saved me from some thugs, and I ended up secretly loving him for 4 years. So, when I stood at that crossroad, I forgot the golden rule of putting myself first. And instead, I chose love, and I ended up losing everything. Thankfully, through the years of heartache, I never stopped painting. One by one, the pieces I created were a reflection of my inner state. And when Eva saw them, she was quite surprised. Olivia, it seems like you've really gone through a lot all these years, she said. So, at her suggestion, my paintings were also included in the exhibition. Chapter 9. On the day of the exhibition, I declined Luis's company and went alone. Honestly, I'd been feeling quite confused these past few days. I wanted to ask him when he began liking me, and if we had already known each other before, but I was also afraid to know the answer. 7 years of marriage had drained me of all my ability to love someone. I was too tired. Now, all I wanted was to hold on to the title of Mrs. Erick and raise the child in my belly on my own. The exhibition was a success, attracting many distinguished guests. Eva, my best friend, was pulling me along to introduce my works to everyone. When Erick appeared behind me, he casually put his arm around my shoulder, shaking hands with each person, then introduced himself. Hello, I'm her husband. Our baby will be born in just 2 months. Would you congratulate us? Everyone looked at him as if he were a fool. Only he was smiling smugly, leaning closer to whisper in my ear. Now these French guys all know you're my wife. Let's see how you and Luis keep flirting. Childish. Why wasn't he in the hospital taking care of Lisa instead of embarrassing himself here? I shook off his hand in annoyance, but when I turned, I saw Luis. He was staring at one of my self-portraits, a maternity portrait I had painted a few days ago to remember my baby's time in my belly. Originally, I didn't want to exhibit it, but Eva loved it and secretly brought it over, promising me that she wouldn't sell it. But at that moment, I saw Eva standing beside Luis, taking his credit card with a flattering smile. A loud buzz filled my head. That traitor. Just as I wanted to go over and stop her, Erick stepped in before I could reach them. He quickly snatched the card from Eva's hand, sneering, "My wife's self-portrait isn't for him to buy. Whatever he's offering, I'll pay double." Eva burst out laughing on the spot. 10 million. So, Erick, are you offering 20? Hearing that, Erick stiffened. Luis bluntly pointed out Erick's predicament. Oh, so your family has already unfrozen your accounts? Ever since the scandal broke, Erick had faced constant contract terminations and breach fees. Originally, his wealthy family background made it seem like it didn't matter. But unexpectedly, even the family business had suffered and was on the decline. To save the company, the family's head, Erick's uncle, had kicked him out. They had even blamed recent losses on Erick and froze his accounts. When had the young master of such a prestigious family ever faced such a financially strapped situation? To turn things around, he had listened to his agent and come abroad to find me, trying to play the role of a reformed man winning back his wife for publicity. But he hadn't expected that I truly didn't want to keep acting with him anymore. Watching the two of them argue and the journalists hiding in the shadows, I felt exhausted. I sent a message to Eva and left the exhibition. I didn't expect to run into Lisa at the entrance. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked even worse than before. Seeing me, she charged up and tried to hit me. Concerned about the exhibition, I didn't want her causing trouble there. I grabbed her hand and pulled her to a small park nearby. Lisa struggled as I dragged her away, all the while cursing, "Olivia, I had no grudges against you. Why did you have to ruin my life? Erick and I were childhood sweethearts. You're the real mistress. So why is everyone cursing me? My baby is gone. My career is gone. And even Erick doesn't want me anymore." The more she spoke, the more devastated she became. She forcefully threw off my hand, crouching down and sobbing. It was just as well. This park was usually quiet, especially during work hours. Even if Lisa made a scene, it wouldn't affect the exhibition. Turning away from her, I took out my phone and dialed Erick's number, telling him to come and deal with his mess. Lisa's cries grew louder and louder, and I never thought she would be so bold. Chapter 10. It wasn't until I heard Luis groan that I turned and saw the knife in Lisa's hand. The blade was so sharp, and it was buried deep in Luis's abdomen. Blood instantly flowed out, staining his white shirt. He, however, didn't seem to care. He reached out to touch my face and smiled. "Don't worry. I'm fine. It doesn't hurt at all." I wanted to put my hand on his wound, but he covered my eyes first. He said, "Don't look, or you'll faint from the sight of blood again, just like last time." I looked at him in disbelief as memories rushed over me like a flood, overwhelming me. It was during my first year at university, not long after school had started. I was an orphan and was being ostracized by my roommates. They tricked me into going to an under-construction teaching building on campus, and then they brought in some thugs. Luckily, there was a boy smoking nearby who saved me. At the time, I had already been knocked unconscious from resisting them. He woke me up, but before I could even see his face clearly, I fainted again because of the blood on him. Right before I lost consciousness completely, I heard him say, "Whoa, she's scared of blood." But Erick, later on, never believed me when I said I was afraid of blood. I thought he had forgotten about it, but I never imagined that there was another possibility, that the person who saved me back then wasn't Erick at all. It was Luis. Fortunately, Luis was saved in time and recovered. 6 months later, Lisa was convicted of attempted murder and would spend the rest of her life in prison. I also divorced Erick. As it turns out, on that day, there were 2 boys smoking at the construction site. One was Erick, and the other was Luis. When they heard my cries for help, Luis rushed over while Erick stayed back, continuing to smoke as if it had nothing to do with him. Luis chased after the thugs, while Erick took me to the hospital. When I woke up and saw Erick's name on the hospital registration form, I had always assumed it was Erick who saved me. I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib and complained, "Why didn't you say something earlier? I went through so much pain." Luis squatted beside me, his face full of adoration as he explained, "Back then, I only saw you as a stranger. I could tell you really liked that jerk, so I didn't say anything. Later on, every time you went looking for him, you found him with Lisa, and gradually, I started to like you." Every time Erick called me over, it was just to provoke Lisa. Once they made up, they'd leave me behind again. I ended up chatting with his roommate instead. At that time, I was so focused on feeling miserable that I didn't really pay much attention to his roommate. I had no idea that it was Luis. If I told him that during all that time, I never remembered what he looked like, would he get mad? Oh well, since there had been a misunderstanding for so long, another one wouldn't matter. After all, I'm really happy now.